Welcome back, everyone. I want to play this clip. This is from the Center for Strategic International Studies, and I'm going to play a few clips for you, and I'm going to let most of these run. I may interject in a couple spots, but what you need to know is again, I told you we were going to be hearing from a guy named Brent McIntosh a lot more these days, and that's because he's the Undersecretary for the U.S. Treasury. You're going to discover that the U.S. may not have hammered out what they need for regulation, but they are not lagging in the efforts to get that done. You're going to find that out in this. Also, why XRP must be used? I think you get the overall answer out of these questions and conversations in this. And I tell you, it's pretty damn exciting because we're going to touch on that as well. So let's start with this. We're going to have Brent McIntosh. This is from just 1 month ago, damn near to the day. So we're going to play this and we're going to hear his remarks opening all of this up. And you will see how the U.S. is not lagging behind in the conversation to resolve the matter. And they've been over a year working on the global stablecoin initiative internationally, just from what Brent says, and I think it's longer. And then we're going to hear also comments about the potential of a Bretton Woods about to collapse and the need for global stablecoins to help that impending collapse. Let's go ahead and get started. Roll that beautiful intro.
This is Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Subscribe for new content notifications. Now, here's Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back, everybody. So let's go ahead and do this. You can follow me on Twitter at @BackupBradleyAbove at the top of the screen, and everything that we're talking about here, this is there. And I will do a video later today that just encompasses a lot of other general XRP news and crypto news that we need to be aware of. I'll do that later today, but this has got some really great information in it. Lay back, let this thing play, listen what they say. I may jump in a couple spots where necessary. Here we go.
Both in a domestic sense and then in an international sense on this issue. But let me stick with the international side. Let me follow up on something that you just mentioned, Brent, on the international coordination piece of it. And you and Kenji both mentioned the G7's work on this topic. Kenji mentioned Japan's leadership on this issue when they were the G20 chair. We know that the Financial Stability Board, the Bank of International Settlements, the International Monetary Fund, a number of multilateral entities are working on this issue. My question to you and then to Kenji is, from a Washington and Tokyo perspective, what is the quote unquote right forum in order to get agreement on some of these requirements that Kenji mentioned, requirements for a digital currency that preserve stability? What are your views on where that should be taking place?
You want me to take that, Stephanie?
Yeah, if you could start, Brent, and then I'll ask the same question of Kenji.
Great. So it's true that there are any number of international fora, multilateral groups working on these issues, because they do, as I laid out the series of different considerations, a number of them are charged with different aspects of that. So for example, and so consequently, they actually sit at different places within the international system. If you look at the Financial Stability Board, for example, the Financial Stability Board has been very focused on ensuring that as these technologies develop, we have a handle on what potential financial stability consequences they might have within countries and across the system. And so last year, the Financial Stability Board, with the advent of so-called stablecoins, put together a group called the Regulatory Issues and Stablecoins Working Group, which I chair along with Durjun Chia of the Monetary Authority of Singapore.
Now, he just told you that the U.S. is the chair of that stablecoin, which is also a global stablecoin issue, because we've studied the PDF file here extensively on this channel. He just told you the U.S. is the sitting chair, and it's him working on that internationally. And what else have we said? From the top down. Everything that we're seeing comes from the top down. It doesn't mean that it excludes the U.S. from the international level, dripping it down. In fact, it includes the U.S. What comes up, what they come up with internationally involves the shaping coming from the U.S. as well as the other major countries sitting on the Financial Stability Board connected to the G20, and more specifically, as he notes later, the G7. Go ahead, keep listening. Those are the largest economies of the world.
We've been working for over a year on developing a set of principles, high-level principles regarding the regulation and supervision by national authorities of stablecoins. And that report will be coming to the G20 next week, the G20 meeting next week. The meeting of the finance ministers, central bank governors, I should say, with 10 high-level recommendations for the regulation and supervision of stablecoins on an international basis. You know, things like, for example, if a digital asset is performing the same function and presents the same risks as a more traditional asset, it should be subject to the same set of rules.
Basically, if it's doing the job and performing the role of money, it should be held to the same sort of rules that money is already held to. And that's the safest, least path of least resistance right there.
To ensure that those risks are managed. Similarly, as Kenji referenced with regard to the prior work on stablecoins, a digital asset shouldn't launch in a jurisdiction until it is able to comply with that jurisdiction's regulatory and legal requirements. Mm-hmm. And moreover, we see a need, which we've identified through that report, for robust international collaboration because of the inherently cross-border nature of these digital currencies and digital payments. And there's going to be a real need for continuing international collaboration to ensure that what one country decides does not prejudice another country, and that we don't create situations of regulatory arbitrage. So there's a lot of work going on there. That's one side. Similarly, in the G7, we have a digital payments experts group that has been looking at sort of broader questions of monetary, what you might think of as more existential questions about money, including the role of public and private that I went through a bit earlier, in terms of the long-term both risks and the opportunities presented here, transparency, the rule of law, sound economic governance, and looking at the questions of how financial innovation, and in particular digital payments, has an effect on those, and where there are opportunities that ought to be seized, and we think there are, and where there are risks that need to be addressed, and there clearly are those as well.
Now, that is clearly telling you about the impact of money, public and private. It's money, ladies and gentlemen. It's money. The very thing that they've been hiding from all of us about XRP, I believe, as well as digital currencies as a whole, should be considered as money, straight currency. That's where we're at here. And I believe if they want to get their little taste internationally through the government structures and the tax structures for all the countries around the world, I think the best way to do that is through it being money. And then you could work on any kind of fair use, micro taxation, because let's face it, you're not getting out of any of this without Uncle Sam or the Uncle Sams of the world getting their share. Now, let me go back, because I want to go back and just really drive this money narrative home. And it starts right here, and I might be a shade early here, but here it is at 16 minutes plus, and let's listen to this little quick clip here.
I think it's a very worthwhile topic. So stepping back and looking at the question of why digital currencies are in the news these days. There's little question that the financial system and the payment system especially has certain shortcomings and pain points that in terms of cost and efficiency, speed, and inclusivity that can be addressed through financial innovation.
Do you know anybody while you're listening to this that's been working on any of those things?
Financial innovation has the potential to remedy those, and that is driving demand for digital currencies, digital payments, financial innovation.
XRP.
But the advent of these new technologies raises what I think are age-old questions around the role of public and private sectors in the provision of money, the creation and movement of money. And the debates in this space they're debates that played out over centuries, but they're debates that now are happening very fast because of the pace of technological innovation in this space. Historically, private companies have not been ideal at providing currencies. They tend to be very good at innovation, and we're seeing that even today, that they are very good at innovation. Innovation is moving at a rapid pace. It was moving rapidly before the pandemic and has continued to pace during the pandemic. On the other hand, private companies tend to have very different incentive structures from public authorities in terms of accountability and their obligation to the public. So, for example, they have different incentive structures when it comes to preserving the value of money. They have different incentive structures when it comes to providing liquidity in times of stress. And so the market stresses during the pandemic, I think, have brought those sorts of questions about incentive structures and accountability very much to the forefront, and have reminded people very much of the importance of finance ministries and central banks in the provision of money. So naturally, both within countries and outside countries, there's been a great deal of discussion about the digital payment space. If you just looking internally to the United States, there are intensive discussions going on among the various financial and economic agencies here.
Listen.
So about the digital payments space and about digital currencies. And that's everything from cryptocurrencies to stable coins to central bank digital currencies. There's discussion of what our view of these are, what regulatory requirements should be in place, how we should react, what our view of these developments is as a matter of the monetary policy and monetary sovereignty of the United States. And so there are intensive conversations going on with Treasury and the Fed and the SEC and the CFTC and the OCC, and also the FinCEN with regard to money laundering and proliferation issues. There are so many.
Real quick, I want to grab that little bit right there that he just said again.
Providing liquidity in times of stress. And so the market stresses during the pandemic, I think, have brought those sorts of questions about incentive structures and accountability very much to the forefront, and have reminded people very much of the importance of finance ministries and central banks in the provision of money. So naturally, both within countries and outside countries, there's been a great deal of discussion about the digital payment space. If you just looking internally to the United States, there are intensive discussions going on among the various financial and economic agencies here. So about the digital payments space and about digital currencies. And that's everything from cryptocurrencies to stable coins to central bank digital currencies. There's discussion of what our view of these are, what regulatory requirements should be in place, how we should react, what our view of these developments is as a matter of the monetary policy and monetary sovereignty of the United States.
Monetary policy and monetary sovereignty. You want to know why they got to use XRP? This is exactly why they got to use XRP. And it's exactly why the other countries around the world need to use XRP too. You want to keep control of your country? You don't want to lose the rights of your nation? You want to keep control and power over your money? Then you all need to agree you are going to adopt a bridge currency, XRP, to sit between all the money, guaranteeing that each country keeps its sovereign nation and its sovereign monetary policy and money. I don't care what anybody says. There's your number one. You could talk about your zero carbon footprint, which is fantastic. You can talk about your interoperability, which is key, but it's key because every country needs to keep their sovereignty. Nobody's going to roll this over into a one world currency. And then the next thing you know, there's no borders, there's no passport, there's no this, there's no that. You can throw that in the ocean because that don't work. Right? So here we go.
States. And so there are intensive conversations going on with Treasury and the Fed and the SEC and the CFTC and the OCC, and also the FinCEN with regard to money laundering and proliferation issues. There are so many different aspects of these developments that it plays within the jurisdiction of a lot of different agencies within the United States. And so coordination across those agencies has been important to developing our view. Similarly, because of the possibility of the cross-border nature of these the issues here, we've had to interact very closely with our international counterparts. And so Kenji and I feel like we discuss this with each other pretty regularly. We discuss it in the G7, of which the United States is the president this year.
Oh, I'm sorry. What did he just say? The G7. The G7. The United States is the president of the G7 currently right now, the largest economies of the world making the decisions internationally. But I thought, wait a minute, because hold on, back up. I thought the U.S. was behind. You mean to tell me they're the president of the largest elite group crafting international law for the world? Come on in.
It has arisen at the G20, where the Saudis are the president this year and where the Japanese were recently the president. We discuss it in the Financial Stability Board, which is particularly charged with questions of potential financial stability effects from digital currencies and digital payments. Because if you look at the places where there are potential consequences, they span a variety of different values and interests we have here. So, for example, there are potential financial stability concerns we need to be addressing. We don't see financial stability risks at present, but we should be looking at those questions as we move forward. Similarly, there are monetary policy and monetary sovereignty concerns.
Like I said, this doesn't work without XRP, the bridge currency to the world, because there is monetary policy and there is monetary sovereignty concerns, right? But if we adopt a neutral asset, a bridge currency to the world, and by the way, this all lays back into pre-allocation and the acceleration program, right, where they pre-allocated $300 million worth of XRP at that time to really incentivize the different governments, networks, and industries around the world to participate in holding this asset. And I can guarantee you, if we're right about what's going on with this language and this verbiage, then the major countries from the G7 and G20 already contractually are bound to use XRP, and it's about working out every little detail so we already got the interoperability. We know the ledger already works. This is about hammering out the small details so that way everybody can go back to their respective nations and know that their sovereignty, their monetary policy is still sound. It's just within their borders. It doesn't need to be anywhere else. And for the first time in the world, currency manipulation will only happen within a country's borders. It will have zero effect on someone else's country and their money. What a change that will be.
Consumer protection concerns with many of these innovations. There's data privacy concerns, which we can talk about later with regard to central bank digital currencies. There's cybersecurity concerns, and then we're very focused, and Secretary Mnuchin has been very focused on the potential money laundering and terrorist financing and other financing of illicit activity that has the potential here, and making sure that these financial innovations, which can have real benefits are done in a way that is responsible and consistent with the regulatory imperatives, the age-old regulatory imperatives that we think need to be carried out in this space.
The age-old regulatory imperatives, which are the current framework for money that are already in place, and making sure if there's anything else we need to bring into this because of this innovation in tech, this interoperability, and the public-private relationship. We need to understand that they want to make sure that they fully understand the impacts of the public-private relationship, because what they're telling you is we see a world where we see private issued stable coins, right? We see a world of CBDCs. We see a world of digital currencies, and all these things that they're leaning into right now fall in the category of being money. This is getting interesting. So I have some other clips. I'm going to break some of those up in a different video later today. But what I want to bring to you now is let me go to a summation here of points at 1:10:25 here. I think this is close enough. Let's jump in and hear Philip Middleton, the chairman of the OMFIF Digital Monetary Institute. Listen to him put a summation on what's happened in this conversation here just a month ago, damn near to the day, and then we'll wrap this thing. Check this out.
Fine. I've noted actually in recent months major reports from central banks looking at digital currency, central bank digital currency, and they seem to be in agreement on four major conclusions, which I think you'll probably be in agreement with.
Now listen to this. Listen.
One is that central bank digital currency will come, and it's not a question of if, it's a question of when and how fast. Some debate about whether it replaces physical cash entirely or whether it complements it, but everybody's tending to an agreement that it's going to come. Two, it has got to be a partnership between the public sector that has a duty to provide means of payments and the private sector, which is probably better placed to provide the infrastructure to do it. Some debates about where that's shared and how, but we've moved on from an idea that it was either public or private to a view that actually this is a joint enterprise.
Unbelievable. He's giving you points and summation of central banks. This is what they are saying. This is what he just set up for you and said, this is what we've learned from central bank's point of view. It's not if, it's not when, and it's not a public and or private relationship. It's a joint effort. Come on in.
Thirdly, a need for the protection of fractional reserve banking, i.e. credit, but also almost the ring fencing of the existing banking system within that structure. And that's very, very interesting indeed. And finally, a growing agreement that interoperability, both in terms of technology and in terms of, if you like, product handover, are essential. So hence coming back to the Undersecretary's view and to Tommaso's view of a global interoperable system.
There you have it, a global interoperable system, which is falling under the view of the Undersecretary of the U.S. Treasury, Brent McIntosh, and Tomas Mancini-Grafali from the IMF Division Chief of Payments. We will hear from him in the next video, reinforce this idea notion. They want to see a highly interoperable system that is a global payments network. And let me tell you something, if that doesn't spell XRP at your house, that's fine, but it spells it at mine. Go ahead and hit that like and subscribe, get that notification bell, make sure you get all the notifications for when we do a video. We will be doing a live stream later this evening from the Digital Ledger channel. Don't miss it. Going to have a lot of great stuff in that. We're going to have a great conversation with some really smart people, which is all of you. And don't forget to check out the links in the description box and the comment section. Guys, if you want a crypto IRA, check it out. I Trust Capital, Ledger Nano, Family Pack sale. Crypto domains. I mean, really great stuff. In fact, somebody sent me some a while ago in an afternoon video. I'm going to celebrate them and help promote theirs. So make sure you check out yours and all the other things that you may want or need. I will catch all of you on the next one.